What's up, guys? Back with another episode of the Evolve Your Brand podcast. This is going to be episode number 54. And we've got Travis Brown from Poddecks on today. We're going to be talking a lot about authenticity, repurposing content, the ways in which you can create impact through your podcast and start to expand your tribe, your circle. I know that we agree on a lot of things. We also probably disagree on a few things as well, which hopefully will keep you guys engaged and interested. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to drop them in the comments section below. If you guys are viewing this right now, that's because you're a member of my free Facebook group. It's called Conscious Branding and Business Ethics for Male Entrepreneurs. We've changed names a few times, but this really sums up exactly what we do in Dave Gold Evolve, where we've created a community of conscious and ethical and high integrity male entrepreneurs we brought together to help level up their life and create massive impact in the world. If you want more information about what I do, feel free to message me privately. And with that being said, let's jump into the show. So, Travis, it is awesome to have you on. And I think we just kind of crossed paths on the gram the way that it should be. And I saw that you were creating content that it triggered me a little bit and it made me think. And at the same time, I really liked it. I really liked your approach, and I wanted to hear more in depth why you think the way that you do and how you got to the place that you're at right now. So could you please, just to start it off, give the listeners, the viewers, a little bit of a background on who you are, what you do, where you're from, and yeah, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm Travis, and I am absolutely obsessed with podcasting. So in my daily life, I have a podcast editing agency where I help authors, entrepreneurs, anybody who wants to have a podcast without doing the dirty work, without doing the editing and making things sound great and show notes. That's what I love to do. So I help people do that. Through that process, I developed a little product by accident called Poddecks, which are unique questions that will spark conversations for anything. So podcasting, lives, with your friends and family, on a date. And that product sort of opened me up to a new audience. I'd been doing podcast production for about a decade, but never really got out in front of people with sharing tips and tricks. And then Poddecks happened and it just sort of exploded. So I've been on a mission to help not only podcasters grow and launch and monetize, but I'm sort of moving into more of the creator world because I think that there's a huge opportunity here for creators, especially with the creator economy growing and growing and growing, to make an impact, grow an audience and monetize that, turn that into a business. So a lot of the content that I share has to do with podcasting, but a lot of the content that I share just has to do with sort of being a creator in general and just trying to help people overcome any obstacles that keep them from creating or having fun doing so.
Mm-hmm. There are so many things that I want to discuss with you today. I think where we could start off at is, why did you get into podcasting? Because I know for me, I was in a coding boot camp. I know one of my clients would laugh at me right now because he actually teaches guys how to avoid the coding boot camp trap. But I will say there were a few things that I really benefited from being in that coding boot camp, and it really inspired some entrepreneurial thinking. And they had asked me a question and they said, if you could do anything, what would you be doing as your passion project? And I said, well, I'm listening to Tom Bilyeu and Lewis Howes and maybe a little bit of Joe Rogan or Tony Robbins and listening to their podcasts, London Real when he was still acceptable. And I really wanted to interview people who were inspiring, who were at places where I wanted to go. And so at first, it was like, let's create this Today We Hustle. And I was all about the hustle culture, right? I've gotten into Gary Vee, and we're going to talk more about Gary Vee on this episode. But for one reason or another, it took me some time for me to take action on my dreams. And then a few years later, snap your fingers, and it's kind of come to reality. And I've started to have all those things that I always wanted, which is beautiful, but at times for different reasons than why I wanted them before. And one of the reasons why I love to podcast and why I've started to podcast with the Dave Gold Evolve podcast, which has evolved into the Evolve Your Brand podcast, is because I love to connect with like-minded leaders. I love to hear more about their journey, about their perspectives, and see how I can bring them into my community and help to inspire, uplift, and really educate my community on other powerful voices that are out there. And so that's the reason why I got into podcasting. Now I want to hear why you got into podcasting.
Yeah, sure. So I was a professional musician for half of my life. So I don't know if you've heard of the Vans Warped Tour, but I was a punk rocker in a band, traveling the country like a gypsy, just sleeping on couches, playing shows, partying, having fun. And throughout that process, I also learned how to record audio so I could record myself, document my music, record others. And at some point, every Peter Pan has to wake up, right? Like at some point, you can only be a band guy for so long. We had some really great successes, songs on TV shows, big tours, record deal, but there was nothing else that was going to happen without a huge corporation coming in and putting a bunch of money behind it. So I decided to pivot, get a big boy job. All my friends had cars and condos and health insurance, and I had nothing. So I got a cubicle job, right? Drove to this cubicle every day, and I wanted a better life. So I started listening to podcasts, turning my car into a mobile classroom. And as I listened to these podcasts, I thought, this is really incredible that you could broadcast your voice and thousands of people can listen to it whenever they want, and you can share value and change lives. And so through that process, I heard a lot of bad podcasts, about a lot of bad sounding podcasts. So I thought, well, maybe there's an opportunity for me as somebody who's interested in audio, and I got a degree in audio engineering. Maybe I could help people make better podcasts. So serendipitously went to a mastermind dinner and met a guy who was like, hey, I'm really hot to start a podcast. And so I said, hey, let me help you. Let me just help you do it. And so I started with Tom. He's been my number one client for 11 years. And I just started helping him launch, craft his show, learn about audio. And from there, he mentioned it to other people, all while in the background, I am also podcasting, right? Not successfully by any means, but like putting myself out there, making shows, doing things. And I think for me, podcasting was very easy to get into from the music world because there's a lot of similarities between a good song and a good podcast. And obviously I'm an extrovert because I'm used to being out there, selling myself, being on a stage and stuff. So the extroversion is very easy for me. But like a good song is really like, there's a couple things that make a good song up. One, it's got a good hook, right? It hooks you in, gets you excited. Two, there's usually a good story, right? There's usually a good story in the song, if they said if you play every country music song backwards, the guy like gets his wife back, uncrashes his car, right? There's a story or a theme in music. And then one of my favorite things about music is when it does something you don't expect. So you're listening to a song and all of a sudden it goes into the breakdown, or maybe they say a line that doesn't rhyme on purpose and it just really makes an impact on you. And songs also can like teach you a lot and take you back in time. Now with podcasting, we're doing the same thing. We're hooking people in for their attention. We're telling stories, we're giving value, and hopefully in there, we get something that we didn't expect. A little spontaneity, maybe somebody shares a story or a tip they never shared before. So a lot of parallels. So I think just being an artsy fartsy guy, a musician, interested in audio, podcasting was a a very easy, simple step for me. But the reason I believe in podcasting so much is because, first of all, it's pretty blue ocean. Like there's only a few million podcasts, where there's like millions and millions and millions of YouTube channels and Instagram accounts and all that. And then, two, it's evergreen. So you do it once and people can listen to it on demand. And then three, you're really creating a relationship with people. So if you want to talk about business, like these are warm leads. These are people who already like you. And all you have to do then is figure out a way to bring them into your community and make them offers. So I hope that kind of sums up a long story into a few paragraphs for you, Dave.
Yeah, and I definitely resonate with some of that. Some of my most amazing clients have come from my podcast, and I've collaborated or worked with others, and that relationship and that bond was formed on the podcast, where we were able to vulnerably open up to each other, but also to the world in a place where that audio or that video will be there forever, as long as we don't delete it. And I'll go back and I'll listen to my podcast when I'm timestamping them and repurposing them for for other platforms as well, like Instagram. And when I go back and I listen to that podcast that I did with that person, it reminds me, I got to reach out to them. I got to see how they're doing. Maybe we should do another one. We've both changed. We've both grown so much. And it wouldn't have been possible if we didn't, take that time out of our day, out of our week, or whatever it was, and just sit down and be fully present with one another and really open up. Now, before we move on to so many other topics, I just want to dive back onto something that you said, which was you didn't have a quote unquote successful podcast. So can you define what is a successful podcast in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, success is so relative, right? So I think most people think of a successful podcast as either having like a huge audience or making lots of money. So what I quickly did with myself as being somebody who was helping other people was, and this is something I still do to this day, is I just conduct experiments. So I'm really like an unqualified scientist who's testing things to get a result and share what works. So everybody wants to hit the charts, right? So what I did was I figured out a way to kind of manipulate the charts through a podcast. And, there's the top 100, and it's not weighted by reviews or anything. It's weighted by a lot of downloads in a short amount of time on a podcast. So I made a music documentary podcast that was 33 episodes long. And I'm like, I'm going to release this all at once. I'm going to promote it and see what happens. So about 300 people downloaded all 33 episodes right in one day. And I shot up the charts and hit like number 50 on the music charts that day in one day. And so what I'm constantly doing is testing things to see what I can share with people to have success in their podcast. Now, to answer your question, what is a successful podcast? I think a successful podcast is relative to what you do with it. If you're in business, you want a podcast to basically communicate with your audience and then make the offers so they buy that product. And if they buy that product, then you're successfully marketing yourself through a podcast. If you want a huge audience, then a successful podcast would be a big community, right? Like, I don't believe in download numbers, because a download just means it goes to a phone. Doesn't mean anybody listened to it. What I do believe in is people in my community telling me, hey, that episode really resonated with me, or I shared it with this person. That is momentum to me. So if you want money, I would say the last thing on earth I would ever do is put an ad in my podcast, just because I would say I'm a purist. I think that everything I do in the podcast is for the audience. And the worst thing about everything is ads. Skip this ad. Watch this ad. Dude, it's the worst.
Okay, but at the same time, you do market certain products like headphones or other things that you are an affiliate of, or what's the difference between having an ad in a podcast and giving a shout out to a product or service that you believe in?
100%. Great question, by the way. So I do promote certain products, and there's two categories for me that they fall into. I never promote anything I don't fully believe in or use. So if a company came to me, and this had happened recently, a podcast app came to me and said, we want to work with you. We want to pay you to promote this. So I said, let me look at it. I looked at the app and I said, I can't promote this. It doesn't solve a big problem. I'm not for sale, right? So some things I'm just sharing as like, here's a tool. Here's the best tool I found, right? I got a shelf full of microphones because I buy all the microphones and test them. So I could share, hey, this is the one I think sounds the best. And then some companies do work with me and they'll pay me to promote a product. And that's really to, expose my audience of podcasters to it. So when I say ads, I mean like dynamically inserted ads. So you can turn on a little box on your podcast host. It'll just start sticking ads all over your podcast. And I think of podcasting like music, like an art form. I would never put an ad in the middle of my song. And what they pay you for that is so little that it's really not worth disrupting your audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that when it comes to YouTube monetization, many people get caught up on how many subscribers they have or how many people have clicked on the video, when actually monetization has to do with watch time. And probably a same benchmark for success in your podcast is, are people actually listening to the full episode, or are they listening to 5-10 minutes and then they're tuning out and turning it off and going to listen to their actual favorite podcast or music that inspires them? Because if your podcast doesn't actually inspire people or, hook them in and provide them some kind of impact in their day, then it's really, in a way, just wasted time for both you and for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think you struck a nerve. Well, you didn't strike a nerve, but like, this is something I'm really, really, really passionate about. Is I think too many creators get disillusioned with the wrong thing. So like, you want 10,000 followers? Sure. Give me $500. I'll go buy you 10,000 followers. But it won't do what you think it's going to do. You may look big to somebody, but your engagement's going to be zero. It's not going to do anything. Do you want 1 million downloads? Sure. I can buy you 1 million downloads, but it's not going to convert to money because it's not real people that would actually take action on an offer or an ad or whatever it is that you're going to do to monetize your podcast. So, I'm on this mission right now, and it's part of my mission in 2022 to get people to create something, not as to like go all in on creating your thing, like create with purpose. And the thing that brought us together was actually this Gary V post that I did. And the proof is in the pudding. Controversy creates comments. And let me just preface this by saying, like, there's two sides to everything, and anything that I say, usually I can appreciate the other side. So I never feel like what I say is the be all end all. But in this specific instance, I was talking about repurposing content and how I think it's toxic. So the analogy I could use is that a lot of people spend time throwing 20 pebbles into the lake, and 20 pebbles make a tiny, tiny little splash. Tiny, tiny, tiny. I'm talking about throwing boulders in, right? So I will spend 20 times as much effort as most people will on my content, and I get a huge splash. Excuse me. Where most people, I think, they just create to feed the machine, whether it be a podcast or a YouTube video, like they get sucked into this momentum of, well, I got to post something. I've got to publish something. And that's the trap. The trap is, if I throw something up every day, I'm doing what I need to do to grow an audience, when in my experience and in my opinion, it's the opposite. Make content for the platform that it's native on. So if it's a podcast, don't just repurpose a video. make a podcast, excuse me.
So I'm gonna jump in right now.
Yeah, please do. Sorry, I'm having a coughing fit.
And we've got a few things to break down. And before I go over to the repurposing part.
Yes.
You talked about the ability to create social proof that is inauthentic. And this is something that I've really juggled with over my entrepreneurial journey, where at one point in time, I've lost friends and lost connections for calling people out over using influencer marketing or engagement services, engagement groups, things like that. While at the same time having engagement groups, and now getting to the point where I start to, toy around with and play around with influencer marketing and paid ads. And there are many times where we want to stick to an extreme, because in the extreme, at many times we can find our community.
Mm-hmm.
Liberals, they've got their community. Mm-hmm. Conservatives, they've got their Fox News and their gun rights and their anti-abortion, and they've got their community, and it's strong and it's passionate. And in the middle, the moderates feel so left out.
Yeah.
They don't know what to say. If it doesn't matter what they say, they're going to offend both sides of the aisle. And I'm over here right now in Portugal, but I'm originally from the US, from Philadelphia. And every time I go back to the States, I feel this aura of political division. Mm-hmm. Well, the same thing can be said with the division in the dating world, in the online business communities as well, in many different spaces where it's either I'm organic or I'm, the Facebook ads guy, or the influencer marketing guy, or the let's build your ClickFunnels funnel and let's go all in on it. And I also see a lot of inauthenticity where these 6 and 7 figure business coaches that have the same cover photo as their coach and the same bio, and are selling people on this dream where a few of their clients are doing very well and the majority are not doing well, but they don't talk about the majority unless you talk to or run across one of their clients who's not doing well. And they use these tactics of the wording, the buzzwords, 6 figures, 7 figures, scaling. You talked about this as well. And on one level, I get it, because there is this expression, and I bet you hate it, which is like, give them, sell them what they want, and then you give them what they need after they've joined your program. Okay. But on another level, if you're not actually qualifying people correctly and really understanding the type of person that you can work well with and impact in your business and in your fulfillment, then it's probably not going to be very fruitful. Okay. What we're dovetailing off of is, in the very beginning of this episode, you talked about how a lot of the people you work with, you want to see do better. You want to see have a bigger impact or grow their podcast or monetize it. But at the same time, you've talked about in one of your episodes that there is this misconception about scaling, and what it is doing is delaying our actual fulfillment in this present moment. So where does the subtlety lie, and how can we, in your estimation, build a thriving community, scale our impact and potential, and still feel whole and good and fulfilled right now?
Yeah. So you unpacked a lot there. So first of all, I'm against all this guru BS, this 6-figure private jet thing. It's all fake. Yes, they might have done it. And listen, it's easy to grow a 6-figure business. It's hard to keep all the money. So I could show you 7 different ways to grow a 6-figure business, but you might have to spend all that money to make the 6 figures, right? So those guys are basically, in my opinion, preying on people's hopes and dreams. My idea of success is simply this. Can you pay your bills? Can you do whatever you want? Great. How much does that cost you a month to do? What does it cost you to live and save a little money? $5,000 a month, $6,000 a month, $2,000 a month? That is success. The millions of dollars, the Ferraris, the private jets, all that stuff is a distraction that will keep people on the conveyor belt to keep buying the products and PDFs and coaching that those people sell. And a majority of them will never, ever hit 6 or 7 figures. So the thought that I like to provoke in people is, okay, I'm self-employed. Do I drive a Ferrari? No. Do I sit on private jets? No. Can I do whatever I want? Yes. That's success to me, right? I'm getting to live to my true potential. So I think that when I say I want to help people grow something, what I'm really focused on helping them grow is the right thing, not the imaginary BS end result, right? Which there's no such thing as a passive income. So all these people that say you can sit on the beach all day and make money.
Or the 4-hour work week.
Sure, 4-hour work week, all that stuff. The 4-hour work week is actually a good lesson, but it's a bad example. It's bad example setting for expectations in entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to tell you how you could grow something, well, you have to get comfortable, first of all, with what does success look like for you? Do you just not want to have to work your 9-to-5 job? Well, then figure out how much money you need to make and create a product or a service or a solution that will allow you to make that much money. And then you don't have to work your job. If that's success, it has nothing to do with cars or clothes or status or whatever. That would be a success for you. If success is growing some multi-million-dollar business, then, that's a whole different story. It depends on the person. So what I teach people how to do is, instead of focusing on all this vanity stuff, vanity metrics, like the only reason to know how many downloads you have on your podcast is to either sell advertisements or to brag to somebody, right? It's the only reason to know. So what I teach people how to do is to find a niche, and this is probably the hardest part for people, is trying not to be everything to everyone, right? If you are in the sports world, figure out which sport and then which team, and then maybe go down even smaller, because you can build a community of 1,000 people and you can make 6 figures off of that, right? Well, people get it all mixed up.
Well, the one of the benchmarks is if you can get 1,000 people to buy a $9.97 or $9.99 product, you become a millionaire. Okay, yeah. That's one of the classic, fast lanes to financial success.
Right. But can you get them results? Because I could sell anybody anything for any price, but if I can't get anybody any results, then I will go out of business immediately.
Okay, so I want to dive into this a little bit deeper, because on the one hand, there is this extreme disconnect between selling a hope or a dream to someone and then not being able to fulfill on that hope or dream, versus being able to fulfill on the dream. And that's why you obviously do have X amount of successful clients, but that person is reluctant, is resistant, is not maybe coachable, is not ready to experience that level of success, has some kind of, patterns or scarcity beliefs or imposter syndrome that is holding them back from having the same results as someone else in your program. And so do you blame the student for not hustling hard enough, for not working harder, for not, having more messages or building their team fast enough, or creating that really inspired content? Do you blame the coach for selling them a dream? I mean, I would rather blame the coach, actually, to be honest. But at the same time, at times it's almost not either party's fault, And what it really is an opportunity for us to learn from the experience and grow and get better. The problem lies is where we sit in a state of denial, and the coach doesn't realize that they're bringing on the wrong clientele that they can't really help, or that that client signed up for that coaching, understood that it wasn't good for them, and then stopped investing in coaching or mentorship or in their own personal development, because then they feel completely jaded and like everyone is trying to take advantage of them and that they're a lost cause.
I think you can. So in this scenario, and I like that. I like the devil's advocate here. I really enjoy this. In this scenario, if you're a coach and you have somebody who has limiting beliefs or a problem, it really comes down, it's the coach's job to keep that person accountable. So if I tell you, like, listen, I have a 5-step plan that works, and I say, your job is to do this step right here to get to this step, to this step, to this step, but you never do this step, then it's just all comes down to accountability, right? I've told you what you need to do. Did you do it? No. Okay. So until you do that, what do I do to keep you accountable? Right. So coaching is, I think coaching is like 20% the formula and 80% mindset, because most people who aren't doing the thing that they want to do have some form of blocker. It could be any of the things you listed. It could be self-worth, imposter syndrome. It could be.
To call yourself a mindset coach actually doesn't really make sense to me anymore, because every coach or consultant is in a way helping someone to reframe their subconscious belief system and change their mindset. And then that's where you need to pinpoint which aspect of their mindset are they changing. Are they changing their mindset around podcasting, around branding, around sales, around their shadow and their spiritual integration, around their dating life, around their relationships? Which aspect of mindset does need, is there room for growth or improvement?
Right. I think mindset coaches, excuse me, just suffer from like not being able to dial it into something, right? But I'm not here to tell mindset coaches not to mindset coach. It's
some of them are successful.
Yeah, I mean, and again, success is completely relative. Like my success, exactly. Like, am I a millionaire? No. Do I care about being a millionaire? No. I want to make enough money to provide for my family, save some money, build a legacy, impact lives. That is success to me. I drive a Volkswagen and I love it. And, like that's success to me. So I walk around all day going like, I'm super successful. Mm-hmm. But if you had, one of my mentors who's multi-millionaire who drives a, Ferrari, comes to my house, and he says, I'm super successful. Well, if that's what success looks like to you, then that's what success is. So it really comes down to just like being real with yourself.
I feel you on that, because I'm traveling the world right now as a digital nomad and living in different countries and different cities. And, I may not be making $25,000 or $30,000 a month, but I'm living in awesome Airbnbs, getting to meet all these amazing people, work with clients that I'm passionate about working with, and really live my dream lifestyle without the focus or the need or the desire to seep off the validation or the satisfaction of, I made it, I'm rich. Now, with that being said, I still have ambition, I still have goals, I still want to continue to grow, but it's all relative. It's all in proportion to the amount of humility and gratitude that I'm showing up with in my personal brand and in my space as well.
Yeah. And you're wealthy in a different way. You're wealthy in experience. And so you're successful in like freedom, right? Like you can travel different places. And in my opinion, that's a very successful lifestyle. And then I look at somebody like Elon Musk, just sold everything he has. His house, all his possessions, has 0 possessions, has more money than anybody. But what do you do with it? Like, when is it enough? When does it will Elon Musk ever feel successful? I bet you when he gets to Mars, he's going to want to do something else. Success is almost a disease. And you have to throttle that by saying, okay, instead of having this monumental goal that will take me forever to hit, why don't I start with a couple small segments that build up to that goal?
Okay.
And I just think that the internet has become this like this weird funhouse mirror that everybody looks in, and they try to look real big, and they try to amass this Ferrari and all this garbage, and they just feel bad the whole time while they're doing it.
And we're not going to get to everything I have to assume that I wanted to cover, because I know you got to jump off here real soon. But you hit a note on something that I did want to cover, and it's going to lead us back into Gary Vee, because now you brought up another big name, Elon Musk. And to me, Travis, the way in which you respond to jab, 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 hook, okay, right hook, or repurposing content, it almost feels like an aversion or an anti-Gary Vee in a sense. Yet, and at the same time, I don't know if you've ever met him or had a conversation with him, or, you know, same thing with Elon Musk. Like, we don't really know whether or not he's happy, or if he just has this ambition to continue growing bigger and bigger and having this crazy impact on the world as we know it. But at the same time, many of the core values, beliefs, and passions that Gary Vee talks about probably fall in line with your tone and your messaging. And yet, many times we look at people who are bigger than us, who are doing things on a different scale, and we can nitpick the things that we don't like about their tone or their message, while also taking a lot of their philosophies, implementing them into our own business, and sometimes giving them credit, sometimes not. So on the one level, I love triggering people, creating really controversial content that gets people really riled up. And then I have to ask myself, am I being hypocritical, or do I really not agree with this other person?
Yeah. So Gary Vee, let me just say this. I have nothing against Gary Vee. I think he's probably an awesome dude. There's a few things that I don't line up with him, as far as he talks a lot about empathy, but he constantly talks over people to give them a solution before actually listening to, like, like empathy is hearing. It's not solving, right? Now, he's got great advice, but like, that's not empathy. Empathy is not ever, like, he has empathy for everybody but his own family. He never sees his children. So that's just my personal taste. Genius, definitely great at marketing, but there's one problem that I think this is another funhouse mirror experiment on the internet. Excuse me. I'm going to get over this cold, I promise. So one of Gary Vee's tactics is to, like, repurpose content, put it everywhere. And I think that that's anti-productive to people who don't have a team of, like, Gary Vee doesn't cut up his own videos. Gary Vee doesn't probably put anything on social media. So to tell Joe Q creator that this is how you're going to do it, I think is a farce. And I think it works if you got a big team. Sure, absolutely do that. But I think that creators spend too much time trying to be everywhere, as opposed to finding one place where their audience is and that they like to use. So my example is, I like Instagram. I like to use it, and that's where my people are. Do I do YouTube? A little bit. Do I do Facebook? Zero. Do I do Twitter? Zero. Do I do Snapchat? Zero. Do I do TikTok? Zero. Because if you focus on something and you really focus on it, you can actually grow it. But if you're just taking something and you're like, I get, like, you can repurpose content in a way that, like, but I don't think people create with enough purpose on the platform they're on. So
no, can I ask you a question? Because some of the clips on your podcast, it's not called Poddecks, right? You've got a different name.
Podcast Builder Club is my podcast.
Yeah, the Podcast Builder Club. So some of the clips or some of the episodes, it seems like, are clips from you being on other podcasts or doing some kind of collaboration, or maybe them coming on your podcast. Am I off there?
So I don't have any like, I think I might have one podcast that I was featured on for a whole season that I shared an episode so people could find out about it. But Most of my episodes are either just me doing a solo cast with advice, or the way I do interviews is I basically make it into a storytelling podcast. And then,
This
I mean,
one
the only
was
thing,
the best way to grow your audience. And you guys were talking about email marketing as a very viable solution for connecting with your listeners from your podcast. Was that one where you were being interviewed on his podcast or he was on yours?
that was me being on his podcast. So
Okay.
Pod Theory. Yeah.
So to me, though, in a sense, that is in a way of repurposing. And I like, because on the one level, I really agree with you. If you're not creating unique and original content and sharing it in the right places where your audience is, then you are not going to get the kind of engagement that you're looking for. People aren't going to want to organically react or just be a part of your community. But on the other hand, like if you do a podcast with someone, and maybe this one could be an example, and we have a great clip, then by all means, I think that you should take it and throw it up on your Instagram. And the same thing can be said for myself, where if I want to generate more traffic to my full length episodes on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, for me, I feel like the best way to do that is to take out some of the best clips from that episode and draw traffic to the full length episode. And that's actually adapting and evolving to create content that really builds a full cycle of growth and distribution in the community.
So do you think that, and this is just an honest question, because this is something I have actually tested, do you think that those clips get people to press the button to go to the podcast? Or have you seen that when you post a clip or a video of you podcasting on social media, do people take the action of going to the podcast?
I think that those clips, just like when you are in the process of bringing someone on as enrolling them into one of your programs, usually it could take 8 times that they see you, or it could take 15, it could take 25. I think on average, it's probably between like 8 to 12 times that they've seen your work before they click the link or before they decide to book a call with you. Okay. And I think that those micro steps for them to start to think more about you, okay, and see you more on their feed are good small baby steps or stepping stones for you to get them to the full length episode, for you to get them to a connection call or to a call where you can break down some stuff, provide them value, and maybe they end up signing up for your program. Without the baby steps, without actually getting into the front of their mind, and one of the best ways to do that right now is through stories on Instagram, stories on Facebook, on different platforms. Too many times I see people just throw up one clip here or there, and then I completely forget that they exist. Whereas someone that I don't even like their content, but I see it all the time and I'm always thinking about them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've tested it and it doesn't convert. I've tested it over multiple different podcasts and multiple different niches. And what happens is, and here's the thing, like, you also have to take into account the other content they produce. So if all you do is post clips of your podcast, I think your podcast social media needs a strategy, like something that can really do what people want on social media, which is to be engaged, to have something to save, to share with somebody, to be inspired, right? So you'd have to take into account what else they're posting. But I think most people are just kind of scraping stuff off and dropping it on Instagram or whatever platform, thinking that this is going to get people to their podcast. And in we're coming on 2022, you know, we're all fighting for attention, your time, your most valuable thing, right? You want to be wealthy, like have 24 hours a day to not have to do anything. So the reason behind the post was to provoke a thought, a different thinking pattern of like, can I do better than just the clip? Like, yes, you have to promote your podcast on social media because their discoverability for podcasters is awful.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if all you do is just take one thing and clip it up into pieces, you could do a lot more damage by going all in and making something on purpose that would end up driving people. Like, tell a story from your podcast through carousel post, with the call to action being that the entire story is at the end of this. So I'm giving them a win. I'm not giving away the best part of my podcast, and I'm still able to drive them, as opposed to just a clip with annotations or an audiogram that doesn't convert. So the idea being that, like, let me get you off this track that you're spending all this time doing that's not getting you results, and maybe make you think a little bit different about how you present yourself, or how you can spend more time making something great and less, instead of the same amount of time making a bunch of small pebbles to throw in the lake. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. And if you've tested it out and that's worked for you, it probably means it is a good strategy and it would work for others as well.
It's not one size fits all, though. Nothing that I promote as a tactic or a result of what I've done is considered one size fits all. And
Yeah.
so,
and yet, and on the other hand, like, it also depends where you're at on the journey. So when you talk about consistency being overrated, okay, I hear that and think, yeah, like where I'm at right now, okay, if I'm just throwing up shitty posts, okay, excuse my French.
Yeah, you're consistent.
You know, I'm consistent, right? If I'm just throwing up Instagram stories, and sometimes I do, I just get a little, you know, have fun with it, right?
Yeah.
I'm being consistent, but my content is not impactful. And I'm at the point in my business where I'm working with a lot of people and creating massive impact in their life and looking to work with a certain type of person, someone who, you know, is actually past a certain revenue mark, whether that's 5 or 10K, they're already established, they're already having impact in their community, and I can help them to expand their message and hit maybe a different social media platform without exerting so much effort or energy. With that being said, I wouldn't be where I am today if I wasn't consistent. And I see that with other very successful people. Like, for example, I'll throw out a name like Aaron Doty. All right. I'm not sure if you know Aaron Doty, but he is a energy coach, subconscious belief coach. And he was posting on Instagram and Facebook and all the platforms, you know, multiple times per day, per week, and just pumping out content to the place that he started to hit the algorithm, that he started to get traction around his content. And now I don't think he's needing to post so much. Now he needs to focus more on the value and the impact of that content and the ways in which he can incorporate the new features of the platform, whether that's going live, whether that's using Reels, whether that is, you know, having a Facebook thriving community, and bringing on different guests and creating different challenges or masterclasses or whatever that may be inside of his business model. But in order for someone to get started, what I think needs to happen is you need to create muscle memory and you need to build up a habit. And if that habit is, instead of opening the phone and consuming, you turn into a creator who is constantly working in the 80% of creation mode rather than the 80% of consumption mode, you're going to be much more likely to get to the place where your mentors and those people that you put on a pedestal, even though you probably shouldn't, they're just normal people, are at, than if you are brainstorming and planning how to make the perfect post and then no one sees it.
Yeah, well, the algorithm doesn't work based on how much you post. The algorithm works on if people stop, if they look at it, if they stay on it, if they save it, if they share it, if they comment on it, and if they like it. So like, unless, and listen, you could post every day, but I can tell you the studies that I've done psychologically, if you see something over and over and over again, it becomes white noise. Like, a perfect example is the siren on a police car in the 50s was like, and they had to change it because people weren't stopping anymore because they were like used to hearing it. Now it's like, you know, they make all these crazy noises because they have to keep reappropriating your attention. Or if you put a Post-it note on your wall that says drink more water, you'll look at it for a couple days and then it just blends into the background and you'll never look at it again. So I do believe, and this is just my philosophy, I believe you can flood the market. You can oversaturate yourself. And there is something to be said for leaving people longing, leaving people wanting more. So what my strategy is and has been is I'm going to come in with a huge impact and then I'm going to wait. I don't have to post every day. I don't have to post every other day if I don't want to. And when my post hits, if people resonate with me, they're way more likely to stop, look, they'll know I have put effort into my post. They're going to engage. They're going to save it. They're going to share it. And then Instagram will say, this is relevant. Show this to people outside of my followers, which is the whole game of social media. If you're focused on the algorithm, the only thing you're focused on is how do I get this to show people that are not following me, my content? And if the content is good enough, you'll have a percentage of the people that see your profile and follow you. And if that percentage is high enough, all you have to do is get seen by more people. So this is just one person's philosophy. Yes, you have to get yourself out there. Yes, you have to get used to creating content. But just like anything else, I think if you put more effort into something, you will get a bigger result. And that may leave you out for 3 days of the week not posting on social media. But
how many times are you usually posting on Instagram or creating stories?
So I do a couple things. So basically, I do carousel posts and some reels, maximum every other day. If I don't have, if I'm not 110% happy with my post, I will wait. I will make it to 110% and then post it when it's ready. As far as stories go, stories is where you can give context to the post. So the day that I posted about Gary Vee, I also went on a story and said, hey, listen, just want to let you know, like, I don't hate Gary Vee. He's a great dude. Let me give you some context, the same context I'm sort of explaining here around this post, right? And then there's, of course, lives and, you know, you can kind of mix those all up. I don't have a schedule for lives or reels. I just make sure that the content is valuable enough for me to feel in my heart that it's good enough to put out, because I'm creating my account like a library of lessons. Like there's no food, there's no dogs, there's no bragging. It's lessons I'm teaching. And that's not going to fit everybody because everybody's not teaching lessons. But I do think there's a lot of quality in storytelling and sharing information in a better way than check out my episode, new episode out now. Things that will never, ever convert. You just wasted whatever time it took you to put that out there. You're saturating the market. You're I mean, you know, I'll even use Gary Vee as an example. I see the guy so much, I just swipe. I don't need to hear any more Gary Vee because he's, besides garage sale going, he's just saying a bunch of stuff that may get me inspired in the moment, but doesn't lead me anywhere. So I'm just like, okay, Gary, like, love you. Glad you're here for some people.
Are
but
you not into crypto or NFTs?
No. I mean, I see the future of it. I see blockchain as being a huge future, but no, I think NFTs are a distraction. I think it's the next parachute for people to jump to that can't be successful at regular shit. So here's the deal. You want a successful product or service? Solve somebody's problem. Find a problem and solve it, and you have a successful product. That's it. or if you have something that can give somebody vanity, because people buy because they buy on emotion, vanity, and solutions. So I'm done with Gary Vee. I have his books. I loved his content for a while, but how much of a guy telling you the same thing over and over again can you take? Now, genius, great marketing, innovator, predictor, all those things. Like there's nothing too bad to say about Gary Vee, but I can tell you that as I consume social media, I definitely do it with a lot of empathy and for the person on the other end. And if I see something over and over, if I go to Instagram and I see your podcast teaser, and I go to Facebook and I see your podcast teaser, and I go to Twitter and I see your podcast teaser, I'm annoyed at that point, because it feels lazy to me that you can't figure out 3 different ways to get me to your podcast. It's just like Gary Vee told you to put it on the chopping block and spit it all out to all the places. And so that's what it's working for him. It can work for me. It's not going to do that.
Travis, do you still need to go in a few minutes? Should we wrap this thing up?
I got 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
I got 5 minutes. I love this conversation, by the way. I think the best podcasts in the world are not where people are like, you're the greatest, I love you. Hey, we're having a real conversation here.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we do here.
And I appreciate you challenging the philosophies and thoughts that I have, because I can honestly say, like, these are just my thoughts. These are just my results. So they don't fit everybody, but I like this conversation a lot.
Just one more thing on the repurposing and Gary Vee, like the strategy that he uses, I agree it's a little bit overplayed, but you can do it in a way that fits into alignment with your own content strategy that you want to create. So you don't need to repurpose content onto all the platforms. You could choose one platform where, as you said, you could start making carousels or Twitter posts, or maybe short little reels or clips to draw people to that place. But what it has to be is something that you have decided for yourself, and not that someone else decided for you. And you've got to feel comfortable and ready to take on that new growth strategy. Now, with that, little rant that I'm going on right now, I love it. I just made a post today, and I know you got to go in a second, so we might have to postpone this conversation to another time, but it's on email marketing. So you said that, email marketing is a great way to stay connected with your audience on your podcast. And I have a former student and copywriter who has been pushing me to get more into email marketing. And I've seen when some of my clients have done it as well, it ends up being more of a distraction and holds them back. And what I don't agree with is looking at the email list as the only viable option should your social media fail, because I feel like then you're setting yourself up for failure rather than creating a strategy, a tribe, and actually engaging content that can draw conversations and connections on social media, where the people are usually opening the apps and checking that all the time. Whereas, for me, email, when I get more than one email a week from one person, I don't even have like a good feeling about them anymore. So I did like that your friend or your guest said that he only sends one email newsletter to his audience per month. And I wonder how that converts. But to me, at times it feels like with email, if you don't have the offer, the systems, the niche, the avatar, everything lined up, and that community, then you're falling back into the traditional long-term play of email marketing rather than just starting to connect with your audience in that more personal level.
Yeah, I mean, I think email marketing is also misunderstood, that every email's got to be this like Shakespearean epic diatribe with pictures and colors and look like all the marketing emails you get. It doesn't. An email can simply be a note from you to your people. Hey, it's Travis. Just want to let you know I released an episode about repurposing content. If you love Gary Vee, you might hate this episode. let me know what you think, hit reply. Like that could be an email, right? And so what people do is they overcomplicate, they copy other people, they copy things that aren't them.
They repurpose their copy posts from Facebook or
Yeah.
LinkedIn and send them out to their email list. And then I'm like, I've already seen this before. Why should I stay subscribed to your list?
Because I'm already getting it over here. Exactly. So, if you take a piece of paper with some stuff on it and you Xerox it, and then you take that Xerox copy and you Xerox it, and you take that Xerox copy, at the end you get something you can't read, right? So it doesn't work. I think the beauty of email marketing is that you own the list. So when Instagram says, we're changing something, and they keep changing things, that at least you have a way to communicate. But none of these are all just pillars that hold up the building. Instagram is only going to show you to 20% of the people that follow you organically. Facebook, less. I think TikTok is the only platform that actually shows you to other people organically. YouTube, like all these things will get you about 20%. So you just have to know, like, yeah, when I send out an email to my 5,000 community members, about 20% open it, maybe more, maybe 30%, right? And I know that, and it doesn't bother me because I don't read every email from every person that I love. They just hit me at the right times, right? I think the same thing goes with social media. I think the same thing goes with all your efforts. You just have to know, like, are a part of your system. But the one thing that you can do is not, this is where people go wrong with all this stuff. They want to be big. They want lots of followers. What you want to do is make a small knit group of connections. Start a community and start with one person and talk to them. Like, you can't start a community and not be there. So talk to one person, and that person will feel seen and invite someone else. Then you talk to two people, and that's how something grows organically. Stop trying to be other people, verified account, all this crap in your bio about how great you are. Show people the result. Don't brag about it in your bio, right? And if you think about having a small audience as actually being a superpower, it becomes really interesting. If I only have 10 people on my email list, I could pretty much like specify it to those 10 people. If I have an email list of 100,000 people, I'm just shooting something out into the ether. And yes, having a lot of people on your list is great if you're doing it right. So it's all relative. I think community is better than anything. I think if you built a community, you could sell there, you could promote there, you could impact there, you could do all that in the same way that we're doing everything on social media. But you have to commit to showing up to run the community. And the mistake that people make is that all these things are just little little easy buttons they could press. Well, if I just repurpose all my content, I don't have to spend any time on social media. And if I just copy this person's email, then I don't have to have an email strategy.
Shiny objects.
Yeah. And so, like, this whole thing's about people. So find one person you can help and help them. And then invite more people and help them. And figure out what their pain points are, and that's your product. And it doesn't, like, you could be self-employed with 5, like, listen, if it costs you $2,500 a month to live, your bills, your car, your all that stuff, you need 5 clients at $500 a month, right? You need 5 people to be self-employed.
I was self-employed when I started with 3 clients who each wanted to work with me for 2 months and pay me $1,000 a month.
Yeah. And so the misconception people fall under is that, well, it's got to be 10K followers and it's got to be 100,000 this and that. No, it doesn't. You believe what these guru guys are selling, and it's all about simple math. How much does it cost you to live? What can you cut out in order to go full time? And then how many people do you need to create a product for or a solution for to make that happen? It's not about the Ferrari. It's not about the bracelet, the Rolex, the private jet, the vanity stuff. It's about freedom, right? So I like to remind people to not chase the rabbit, because it'll never be enough. Like, you get $1 million, you want to. I know people that have 50,000 followers on Instagram, and all they can talk about is when they get to 100,000. And it's like, okay, it'll never be enough for you. So you're stuck in this longing loop of wanting more and more and more. How about you just spend a little time and nurture those 50,000 people, right? Like, if I was at a bar and I was talking to a chick and she was looking over my shoulder for other people the whole time, I would not feel like she's into me. Same thing happens with your audience. When you're like, where's everybody else? Where's all the audience? Where's the more listeners? Where's this? Your audience is right in front of you going, this person gives zero care that I'm here. And that's where you lose them. So this is one guy's experience, philosophy. All I can tell you is that I'm an artist. I believe in making great stuff as opposed to crappy stuff. I'm fully gainfully employed. I feel richer than Elon Musk because I get to do stuff like this, right? And I get to make things I want. I get to make an impact, and I don't care if I have 7,000 or 70,000 followers. I'm still going to behave the same way.
Travis, it's been a pleasure having you on the podcast today. And although we don't agree on everything, we share a lot of common values. And I'm sure there are going to be some guys who listen to this who resonated with your message. So if there's one thing that you could tell them or one place that you want them to go, what would it be?
Just follow me on Instagram at Poddecks. I communicate with everybody. I follow back. I send audio messages. It's the place to be for me. So yeah. And I love that. Like, I love the fact that you invited me here on the idea that we don't agree, because just because me and you don't agree doesn't mean that we have to be at odds or any hate. Like, I love you for it. Like, I'm cheering you on. And that's the big problem with the world, is that you're either a liberal or a conservative. There's nothing in the middle. And when it comes down to it, there's lots of different ways to do things. And so I really appreciate that you even told, like, you didn't like trick me and get me here and say, well, I don't agree with you. You said, I would love to have a conversation with you because I don't agree with you. And I love that. So if more people could have conversations like this, respectfully, I think we could get the world going in a better place. So I applaud you. Golf clap.
Thanks, buddy. Guys, if you listen to this whole episode, thank you so much. The only cost is to like, comment, subscribe, or share it with a friend. And if you are interested in being a part of a conscious male community where we talk about spirituality, purpose, branding, self-loving connection, we're starting the Dave Gold Evolve Mastermind 2.0 in January. So feel free to reach out to me. It's been a pleasure. Talk soon. Peace.